My son Michael thought he was clever, tucking me away in this nursing home with a pat on the head and a promise to visit. He sold my house, pocketed the money, and drove away in his luxury car without a backward glance. His perfect life needed no reminders of aging parents or humble beginnings. What he never suspected was that the modest house, the simple clothes, the careful budgeting all were choices, not necessities. Behind my unassuming smile lies a $10 million fortune accumulated when Silicon Valley was just taking root. Now, as I sit in this room with its thin walls and overworked staff, I don't feel defeated. I feel awakened. Michael wanted to write me out of his story, but he forgot one critical detail. I'm not just any mother. I'm the woman who built an empire. In secret while making his school lunches, and I've finally run out of patience. Just before we get back to it, I'd love to know where you're watching from today. And if you're enjoying these stories, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow's special episode is one you definitely don't want to miss. The afternoon light filtered through my living room curtains, casting long shadows across the worn carpet I'd meant to replace for years. At 72, I'd grown accustomed to the quiet rhythms of widowhood, the solitary cups of tea, the television programs that filled the silence, the occasional calls from my son Michael that had grown increasingly brief, but nothing prepared me for what would happen that Tuesday in April when the doorbell rang. I smoothed my blonde hair, now more silver than gold, and opened the door to find Michael standing there with an uncharacteristic bouquet of flowers. Behind him, his wife Vanessa lingered near their luxury SUV where their teenage children waited, faces illuminated by their phones. "Mom," Michael said with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Surprise, visit. Can we come in?" Something in his tone made my stomach tighten. I'd raised him alone after James died 20 years ago, taught him to look people in the eye when speaking truth. Today, his gaze flitted around the entryway, landing everywhere but on me. "Of course," I said, stepping aside. "Is everything all right?" Michael and Vanessa settled on my couch while I prepared coffee. When I returned with the tray, colorful brochures were spread across my coffee table. Golden Sunset Retirement Home. One announced in cheerful lettering over photos of smiling seniors playing chess in a sunlit room. "What's all this?" I asked, though somehow I already knew. Michael cleared his throat. "Mom, Vanessa and I have been talking. This house is getting to be too much for you to manage alone." "I managed just fine," I replied, noting how Vanessa's diamond bracelet caught the light as she reached for her coffee. It looked new and expensive, like the European vacation they'd just taken, documented in endless social media posts. "The stairs are dangerous?" Vanessa chimed in, her voice dripping with practiced concern. "And you're all alone here. What if something happened?" Michael nodded. "We're downsizing your expenses. The market's great right now, and we've found a perfect place where you'll have care around the clock." "Downsizing?" I echoed. "This is my home, Michael. Your father and I bought it when you were 3. You took your first steps in this living room." A flash of something guilt perhaps crossed his face before he reached into his briefcase and pulled out a folder. "Mom, I know this is sudden, but the paperwork's already done. Remember when you had pneumonia a few years back, and you signed that power of attorney? It gave me authority to make these decisions." The memory came back sharply. I'd been weak from illness, and Michael had brought papers to sign just in case. I'd trusted him completely then. "You've already sold my house." My voice sounded distant to my own ears. "Without asking me." "It's for the best," Vanessa said, checking her watch. "The kids have activities tonight, so we should really get your essentials packed." As if on cue, Michael stood and started toward my bedroom. "We've arranged for the movers to come tomorrow. Golden Sunset only allows a certain amount of personal items, so we need to be selective." I sat frozen as they moved around my home, designating what was appropriate for my new living quarters. Vanessa held up family photos, declaring some too old-fashioned for my fresh start. Michael efficiently packed a single suitcase of clothing, leaving behind most of the wardrobe I'd carefully maintained. When he reached for the bookshelf, I finally found my voice. "Leave those," I said firmly. "I'll choose my own books." He raised an eyebrow but stepped back as I approached the shelf, my fingers finding the spine of a vintage Pride and Prejudice edition. Inside its hollowed pages lay a small brass key taped carefully to the binding and noticed as Michael glanced over. "Just another old book," he muttered, turning back to his inventory list. "It was your father's favorite," I lied. James had never read a page of Austen in his life, preferring business journals and sports biographies, but the mention of his father was enough to silence Michael's objections. A soft knock at the bedroom door interrupted us. Emma, my 16-year-old granddaughter, stood in the doorway, her eyes red-rimmed. Unlike her older brother Jason, who had inherited his parents' calculating coldness, Emma had always been different, sensitive, observant, kind. "Can I help, Grandma?" she asked quietly. "Your mother needs you in the car," Michael said without looking up. "I'll be quick," Emma insisted, closing the door behind her. Once we were alone, she threw her arms around me. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. "This isn't right." I tried to tell them. I held her tightly, breathing in the scent of her shampoo. "Things aren't always what they seem, Emma," I whispered back. I took off the locket I always wore silver, tarnished with Aegeon, pressed it into her palm. Inside was a photo of us taken on her 10th birthday. "Keep this for me." She nodded, slipping it into her pocket as Michael called her name from the hallway. The next morning passed in a blur. The movers came, efficiently dismantling my life into boxes. By afternoon, I was sitting in the passenger seat of Michael's car, watching my home recede in the side mirror as we drove away. Golden Sunset Retirement Home loomed ahead. A 3-story brick building with windows that seemed too small. The reception area smelled of industrial cleaner and overcooked vegetables. A thin woman with a clipboard greeted us with rehearsed cheerfulness. "Mrs. Williams, welcome to your new home. We're just so excited to have you join our family here. Room I, suite." As the brochure called, it was a rectangular space with beige walls and a single window overlooking a concrete retaining wall. 2 twin beds separated by a curtain filled most of the space. On one sat an elderly woman with wispy white hair who didn't look up as we entered. "This is Gladys," the attendant said. "She'll be your roommate. Gladys doesn't get many visitors, so I'm sure she'll appreciate the company." Gladys continued, staring at the silent television in the corner. Michael unpacked my suitcase with quick, efficient movements. "I've set up automatic payments from your account," he said. "Everything's covered, room, board, basic medical. If you need extras, just let me know." I sat on the edge of the bed, feeling the thin mattress sink beneath me. "When will you visit?" I asked. "Every week," he promised, checking his watch for the 3rd time in 10 minutes. "Look, Mom, I know this is an adjustment, but you'll settle in, make some friends, join the activities. They have bingo on Thursdays." When tears began sliding down my cheeks, Michael patted my shoulder awkwardly. "I've got to run important client meeting. Vanessa will call you tomorrow." And then he was gone, the door clicking shut behind him. That night, I lay awake listening to Gladys's labored breathing across the room. The light from the hallway seeped under the door, and occasionally a nurse's aide would pass, shoes squeaking on the linoleum at midnight. When the floor was quiet, I retrieved the cell phone I'd hidden in my nightgown pocket. One Michael didn't know. I owned and dialed a number I knew by heart. "Eleanor," I said when she answered. "It's me, Margaret." My oldest friend's voice was immediately alert, despite the hour. "What's happened?" "It's time," I whispered, careful not to wake Gladys. "He's finally shown me exactly who he is." Eleanor. My attorney for decades understood immediately. "I'll come tomorrow. Don't do anything until I get there." As I unpacked the few belongings Michael had deemed appropriate, I discovered most of my family photos and keepsakes were missing. In their place was a digital photo frame with a note. "Loaded all your old pictures on this save space." The frame, unsurprisingly, didn't work. I tucked the hollowed-out book under my pillow and finally allowed myself to cry, silently and completely, until exhaustion pulled me into dreamless sleep. 3 weeks passed, each day blending into the next with monotonous routine. Wake at 6:30, breakfast at 7:15, medications at 8 o'clock, group activities at 10 o'clock, lunch at noon. Michael had visited exactly once for 15 minutes, bringing a boxed chocolate cake from the grocery store, despite knowing I was diabetic. He'd spent most of those 15 minutes on his phone, his leg bouncing impatiently beneath the cafeteria table. I spent my days observing, learning the rhythm of the nursing home and its inhabitants. Most of the staff were kind, but hurried too, few people handling too many patients. Louisa, a night nurse with gentle hands and tired eyes, became my favorite. She took time to talk, to listen, to treat me like a person instead of a task to complete. "Your son, visit today?" she asked one evening. As she helped me prepare for bed, I shook my head. "Business trip." Something in her expression told me she'd heard this excuse from other residents' families too often. "Family busy, I understand," she said diplomatically. "My daughter, she has dance recital tomorrow." "Second job, I miss it again." "2 jobs." I asked. Louisa nodded, adjusting my pillows. "Medical bills. My little one, she has asthma, insurance not cover everything." I thought of Michael's 5-bedroom house, the vacations, Vanessa's jewelry, and felt a familiar ache. It had always been this way with money. Those who needed it most had the least, while those who had plenty only wanted more. That night, as Gladys snored softly across the room, I opened my notebook and began to write, starting with a day in 1970, when my life had taken its first unexpected turn. Silicon Valley? 1970, the office of Horizon Technologies occupied the second floor of a nondescript building in Palo Alto, as the only secretary for a staff of 5 programmers. I answered phones, typed correspondence, and made coffee that everyone complained about but drank anyway. Margaret, these letters need to go out today. Howard Pearson, the company founder, placed a stack of papers on my desk. At 35, Howard was brilliant, but socially awkward, more comfortable with computers than people. His shirt was perpetually untucked, his glasses smudged, his dark hair a riot of cowlicks. I'll have them ready by 2, I promised. Already deciphering his cramped handwriting, Howard lingered at my desk instead of retreating to his office. You changed the filing system. I froze, fingers hovering over my typewriter keys. I'm sorry. I should have asked first. It just seemed more efficient, too. It's better, he interrupted. Logical. You organized it by project phase and date. Makes more sense than alphabetical for what we do. I relaxed. Thank you. He pushed his glasses up his nose. You're good with systems. Ever thought about learning programming? I laughed. Women don't program computers, Mr. Pearson. Howard frowned. Why not? The first programmer was a woman, Ada Lovelace. He glanced at the stack of letters. If you want to stay after hours, I could show you some basics. That conversation changed everything, while other secretaries left. At 5 to meet boyfriends or prepare dinner for husbands, I stayed late, hunched over coding manuals, absorbing information like a sponge. Howard was a patient teacher, and I discovered I had an affinity for the logical puzzles of programming that matched my orderly mind. By 1975, Horizon had grown to 30 employees, and I'd moved from secretary to Howard's trusted lieutenant. Managing projects and contributing code? I'd also married James Williams, a handsome accountant who'd initially been charmed by my independence but increasingly questioned my commitment to a career. Another late night, James asked when I arrived. Home at 8, loosening his tie as he watched the evening news. His dinner plate sat in the sink, unwashed. Howard's meeting with investors tomorrow. We need the prototype working. I rubbed my temples, exhausted but exhilarated. The coding problem that had stumped everyone for weeks solved it just before leaving. James muted the television. Margaret, you missed Michael's bath again. He cried for you. Guilt stabbed through me as I glanced at our son's bedroom door. At 16 months, Michael was walking, babbling, developing his own stubborn personality. I'll go kiss him goodnight. He's already asleep, James said flatly. Again, I'm sorry, I said, meaning it despite the frustration building inside me. Why couldn't he understand? This career wasn't just a job, was part of me. Just as being a mother was. December brought snow flurries and the company Christmas party. Howard, tipsy on champagne, pulled me aside near the punch bowl. Margaret, I've been thinking about your bonus this year. I smiled. The project's success was a team effort. Howard shook his head. You saved it. Everyone knows that. He lowered his voice instead of cash. How would you feel about company shares? I blinked, surprised. Shares, 20%, he said. I've already spoken to the board. You've earned it, Margaret. You understand what we're building here. Later, I showed James the certificate, expecting him to share my excitement. Instead, he frowned. Paper, he said. You worked overtime for months for paper. We need a down payment for a house, Margaret. Not stock in a company that might not exist in 5 years. Howard believes in me, I argued, and I believe in what we're doing. James sighed, rubbing his forehead. I just think it's time you focused. On our family, Michael needs his mother. The argument simmered for years, resurfacing whenever work demanded extra hours. I compromised where I could, working from home on weekends, bringing Michael to the office occasionally, hiring a kind neighbor as a part-time nanny. Then came 1985, and everything changed again. Howard burst into my office without knocking, wild-eyed and grinning. We did it. The IPO is set. We're going public next month. The initial public offering valued Horizon Technologies at $300 million. My 20% stake, acquired through years of Christmas bonuses and salary supplements when cash was tight, was suddenly worth $60 million. Overnight, I went from comfortable to wealthy beyond imagination. James was stunned when I showed him the valuation. $60 million, he repeated, staring at the paperwork. This can't be right. It is, I said, still processing it myself. Howard says it might go higher after the first day of trading. For a moment, James was speechless. Then, we need to buy a new house, something in Woodside or Atherton, and I'll quit that soul-sucking accounting job. Maybe start my own firm. I frowned. James, I don't think we should change anything yet. Let's be smart about this. Smart. He laughed incredulously. We're rich, Margaret, $60 million rich? Why would we keep living like this? He gestured around our modest 3-bedroom ranch house. Because money changes people, I said quietly, thinking of my own childhood, the lean years after my father lost his job. The sudden inheritance that transformed him from loving parent to bitter alcoholic within a year? I don't. Want it to change us? The argument escalated, lasting days. James wanted mansions and sports cars, country club memberships, and private schools for Michael. I wanted prudent investments, college funds, charitable foundations, and, most importantly, normalcy for our son. Fine, James finally conceded. We'll do it your way. But we don't tell Michael about the money. Not until he's grown and established. I won't have my son turning into some trust fund brat who never works a day in his life. On this, at least, we agreed. Michael, 10 years old and obsessed with baseball cards, would be raised with no knowledge of our wealth. As far as he knew, his mother had a good job at a growing tech company, and his father ran a small accounting practice from a downtown office. I called Eleanor Blackwell, a college friend who'd become a respected attorney. Over lunch at a quiet restaurant, I laid out my concerns. I need to protect this money, I explained, from James's impulses, from outside pressures, even from myself. Eleanor nodded, understanding immediately. We'll create a financial structure that keeps the assets separate from your normal family finances. Trusts, investment vehicles, private holdings layered for privacy and protection. James can't know the details, I added. He'd never agree to the restrictions I want to put in place. Eleanor raised an eyebrow but didn't judge. It's your money, Margaret. You earned it. Over the next decade, I worked with Eleanor to build a financial empire hidden in plain sight. Multiple anonymous LLCs owned properties across the country, investment accounts under various business names generated steady returns. A complex web of trusts held assets for future generations. Meanwhile, at home, James grew increasingly resentful of our relatively modest lifestyle. The compromises I'd made: a larger house in a better neighborhood. Private school for Michael, annual family vacations weren't enough. He wanted visible wealth, status symbols, membership in the Silicon Valley elite. Michael, watching his father's materialism and his mother's restraint, developed his own complicated relationship with money. He studied business at James's insistence, married Vanessa from a good family, and eventually started his own investment firm with the moderate trust fund he received at 25, the only portion of my wealth we ever revealed, when James died of a heart attack at 58. I mourned the young man I'd married rather than the bitter, status-conscious stranger he'd become. After the funeral, Michael began helping with my finances, insisting I needed guidance navigating widowhood. Mom, you can't manage all this yourself, he said, gesturing at the modest portfolio of stocks and bonds. I showed him the small, visible portion of my actual wealth. Let me handle it. It's what I do for a living, I agreed, playing the role of the financially naive widow. It was easier that way, and I wanted to believe Michael's intentions were good. Perhaps in the beginning they were. Mrs. Williams, Louisa's gentle voice pulled me from my memories. You need medicine now. I closed my notebook and accepted the small paper cup of pills. Thank you, Louisa. You writing book? She asked, noticing. My pages of neat handwriting, just memories, I said. Sometimes they need a place to go. After Louisa left, I called Eleanor again. How are you holding up? She asked. Well enough. I've started documenting everything: my history with Howard, the money, what's happened with Michael. I need your help, Eleanor. What do you need? I need you to visit, but not as my friend. Come as a nursing home social worker, checking on new residents. Bring the documents from the safe deposit box, the ones with the key from my book. Eleanor understood immediately. I'll be there Thursday. Hang in there, Margaret. That night I met Dorothy, my first friend at Golden Sunset. 80 years old, with posture that suggested ballet training. She appeared in the day room with a contraband bottle of wine hidden in her knitting bag. You look like you could use a drink, she said, pouring red wine into paper cups. I'm Dorothy Winters, 3 years in this glorified prison. Margaret Williams, I replied, accepting the cup gratefully. 3 weeks. Dorothy nodded knowingly. Children. 1 son, 2 daughters for me. Haven't seen them in 18 months. She sipped her wine without self-pity. They sold my house in Greenwich, divided the antiques, and tucked me away here. Now they're too busy to visit. Over the following weeks, Dorothy introduced me to others, like us, the forgotten ones with families who had moved on. We gathered in the garden when weather permitted, sharing stories and Dorothy's mysteriously acquired wine. Emma began visiting secretly, slipping in after school and signing in as volunteer hours for her community service requirement. During one visit, she confided what she'd overheard at home. Dad's been really stressed. she whispered as we sat in the garden. I heard him telling Mom that Pierce Financial pulled their account. That's like their biggest client. Is that so? I asked, keeping my voice neutral. Emma nodded. And they've already sold most of your furniture. Dad says they'll list your house next month after the renovations are done. My jaw tightened, but I forced a smile. How are you doing, Emma? With all this, her eyes welled with tears. I hate it. It's not right what they did to you, and Jason's just like them now. All he talks about is getting into Wharton like Dad, making connections, building his brand. It's gross. I squeezed her hand. You're different, Emma. You see people, not opportunities. Don't lose that. When Eleanor arrived Thursday, disguised as social worker Ms. Watson, we met in the garden while Dorothy kept lookout. I brought everything, Eleanor said, passing me a manila envelope. Inside were copies of property deeds, account statements, ownership certificates, the paper trail of my secret empire, now worth over $10 million. He sold the house, I told her. They've already cleared it out. Eleanor's expression hardened. Technically legal with the power of attorney, but ethically questionable. We could challenge it. I shook my head. Not yet. I'm playing the long game, Eleanor. I glanced around the nursing home grounds. Something's wrong here. The staffing? The medications, the care standards, it's all below minimum requirements. Residents are suffering revenge, Eleanor asked, arching an eyebrow. Justice, I corrected. But I'd be lying if I said seeing Michael's face, when he realizes what he's done, doesn't appeal to me. Double quotes. Eleanor studied me with concern. Just remember, Margaret's revenge might not bring you peace. I know, I sighed, but neither will letting him get away with this. That night, as if to confirm my suspicions about Golden Sunset, an elderly man named Frank collapsed in the hallway outside my room. The single nurse on duty took 7 minutes to respond to the emergency call button. By then, Frank's lips were blue dot as they wheeled him out on a stretcher. I heard the administrator whisper to the nurse, chart it as a pre-existing condition. We don't need another incident report this month. Lying in bed that night, listening to Gladys's breathing across the room, I made my decision. Michael had abandoned me here, thinking I had nothing left, no power, no voice, no resources. He would learn how wrong he was. But first, I needed to understand exactly what was happening at Golden Sunset, and why. I clutched my hollowed-out book, the brass key cool against my palm. Tomorrow, I would begin. The morning after Frank's collapse, I woke with renewed purpose. If Michael thought he'd tucked me away in this facility to be forgotten, he was sorely mistaken. Golden Sunset wasn't just unpleasant, was dangerous. As I pinned my thinning blonde hair into a neat bun, I made a silent promise to myself, and to residents like Frank. I would expose what was happening here. During breakfast in the dining hall, I observed everything with fresh eyes. The food was lukewarm and bland, but more concerning was the medication distribution system. A single overwhelmed aide handled medications for 30 residents, frequently mixing up dosages or skipping people entirely when called away to handle other emergencies. They're understaffed deliberately, a gravelly voice said beside me. I turned to find an elderly man with sharp blue eyes studying me over wire-rimmed glasses. Maximizes profit margins. I'm Margaret, I offered, extending my hand. Walter Simmons, he replied with a firm handshake. Former investigative journalist with the Post. Now just another old-timer waiting to die. Doesn't look like you're just waiting, I noted, gesturing to the notebook partially hidden under his napkin. A small smile lifted the corner of his mouth. Old habits. I've been documenting irregularities here for months. He leaned closer. Heard you asking questions about Frank Peterson's collapse? Interested in the truth? Are you? That conversation marked the beginning of an unexpected alliance. Over the following days, Walter taught me how to document systematically dates, times, staff names, incidents, all recorded in shorthand he'd developed during his reporting days. Never keep just one copy, he instructed, tapping my notebook. And don't be obvious. Pretend you're writing letters or doing crosswords. Walter's body had been partially paralyzed by a stroke 2 years earlier, but his mind remained razor sharp. From his wheelchair by the dayroom window, he observed everything. His journalist's instinct for patterns and anomalies, undiminished. By age, Golden Sunset has a death rate 18% higher than the state average for similar facilities. He informed me one afternoon as we played chess over cover for exchanging information. But they've never been cited because the paperwork always shows natural causes or pre-existing conditions. How do they get away with it? I asked. Moving my bishop. Walter captured my pawn. Money and connections. The parent company, Meridian Healthcare, has board members who previously worked for the regulatory agencies. The inspections are always announced weeks in advance. That night, I cornered Louisa during her medication rounds, my intuition telling me she could be trusted. Are the medications often miscounted? I asked quietly after Gladys had fallen asleep. Louisa's hands stilled momentarily before resuming. Her work? I don't know what you mean, Mrs. Williams. I think you do, I replied gently. I'm not trying to get you in trouble, Louisa. I'm trying to understand what's happening here. She glanced nervously at the door before sighing. Some nights the counts are off, pain medication especially. Management says it's record-keeping errors, but you don't believe that? I can't prove anything, she whispered, but patients in pain, they're not making it up. And when I request additional medication for them, there's always paperwork delays. Is someone stealing the medications? I pressed. Louisa's eyes darted to the door again. Mrs. Bellworth, the administrator, her son had addiction problems. He visits her office most Fridays. She straightened up. I've said too much. Please, I need this job. My daughter. I understand, I assured her. Thank you for your honesty. The key from my hollowed-out book had been burning a hole in my pocket for weeks. It was time to put it to use. During our next meeting, I handed it to Eleanor. Safe deposit box at First National under the name Margaret Pearson. Howard's last name, I explained. There's documentation you need to retrieve ownership certificates for several LLCs, account numbers, passwords. Eleanor nodded, tucking the key into her purse. I've been meaning to tell you I had someone look into Michael's investment firm. It's not just losing clients. It's potentially facing SEC scrutiny for mismanagement of retirement funds. How bad? I asked, a knot forming in my stomach. Despite everything, he was still my son. Bad enough that he's been making desperate pitches. 2 new investors while maintaining that ridiculous lifestyle. The house, the cars, Vanessa's shopping habits, they're drowning in debt but keeping up appearances. I absorbed this information, pieces clicking into place. That explains the sudden urgency to sell my house. He needs the cash. Not just that, Eleanor continued. He's been asking about accessing your retirement accounts, the ones he knows about. Claims he needs to rebalance your portfolio due to market volatility. A bitter laugh escaped me. Market volatility. That's rich. I shook my head. What about the power of attorney? Can he access everything? No, Eleanor assured me. The one you signed has limitations he doesn't know about. It applies only to healthcare decisions and the management of already disclosed assets. Your hidden holdings are secure. That evening, Emma visited with her friend Tyler, a lanky 18-year-old with dark-rimmed glasses and uncombed hair. Despite his disheveled appearance, his eyes held remarkable intelligence. Tyler's a computer genius, Emma explained. He can help you document everything securely. Tyler shrugged modestly. I just think what they've done to you sucks. Mrs. Williams. My grandma was in a place like this before she died. Nobody listened when she complained about stuff. Within an hour, Tyler had set me up with secure cloud storage and email accounts, accessible from the ancient computer in the nursing home's resource room. He showed me how to encrypt notes and back up documentation safely. Nobody will be able to trace this back to you, he promised. And if anything happens to your physical notes, everything's saved online where they can't delete it. As Emma and Tyler prepared to leave, Emma hesitated at the door. Dad's been acting weird, Grandma, super stressed. He keeps having these intense phone calls behind closed doors. About what? I asked. I don't know exactly, but I heard him telling someone named Craig that he'd find the money and just needed more time. And ... She bit her lip. They sold almost all your furniture. Jason let it slip yesterday that they're renovating your house to flip it for a profit. The casual cruelty of it stung. James and I had chosen every piece of that furniture together, creating a home for our family. Now it was just inventory to be liquidated. Dad said it was what Grandpa would have wanted, Emma continued, disgust evident in her voice. As if Grandpa would have wanted his daughter dumped in this place. After they left, I sat on my narrow bed, processing everything. Michael wasn't just trying to simplify his life by placing me in care. He was desperately grasping for cash while maintaining his facade of success. My house, my belongings. My supposed retirement funds, all resources to be drained. Walter's words from earlier that day echoed in my mind. Always look for the money trail. It never lies. The following week brought a medical emergency that confirmed all my suspicions about Golden Sunset. My blood pressure medication was misplaced for the 3rd time, and by evening, my vision was blurring and my head pounding dangerously. Gladys pressed the call button repeatedly, but no one came. By sheer luck, Emma had chosen that evening for a visit. Finding me disoriented and in distress, she immediately called 911 on her cell phone. Ignoring the staff's later protests that facility protocol required them to evaluate residents before Outside medical intervention, the ambulance paramedics were furious at my condition, openly questioning the staff about the missed medication doses. As they wheeled me out, I caught sight of Mrs. Belworth, furiously scribbling notes, already constructing the narrative to absolve Golden Sunset of responsibility. The hospital kept me overnight for observation. When Michael finally arrived the next morning, his concern seemed genuine, but fleeting. "This is exactly why we put you in a facility with round-the-clock care," he said, missing the irony entirely. "You're not capable of managing your medications anymore." "The medications weren't given to me, Michael," I corrected, my voice stronger after treatment. 3 days in a row he waved this away. "Miscommunication, I'm sure. These things happen. People die when these things happen." Michael checked his watch, a Rolex that had to be new, and stood. "I need to get back to the office." "Crisis. With a client? Vanessa will pick you up this afternoon and take you back to Golden Sunset." That never happened. Instead, Emma arrived alone, her eyes red from crying. "They took my phone," she said, sitting beside my hospital bed, "and my car keys. Dad and Mom had a huge fight about me coming to the hospital last night. They said I'm forbidden from visiting you." I reached for her hand. "Yet here you are." A small, defiant smile. I snuck out, took the bus. Her expression turned serious. "Dad's drinking a lot, Grandma, and Mom's barely home anymore. She says she's at charity meetings, but Jason saw her having lunch with Dad's business partner, Craig." "And how are you handling all this?" I asked, squeezing her hand. Emma shrugged, trying to appear casual, though her eyes betrayed her pain. "I applied to colleges as far from here as possible. I can't stand who they've become. If they were ever different." "They were," I said, thinking of Michael as a child, eager, kind, curious. "Your father was a sweet boy once. Money and status got twisted up in his mind. I don't want to end up like them," Emma whispered. "You won't," I assured her. "You see clearly what matters." After returning to Golden Sunset, I knew I needed to accelerate my plans. I'd been playing a careful waiting game, gathering evidence and building alliances. Now it was time for action. Walter introduced me to his grandson, Simon, a journalist like his grandfather, but focused on the digital realm. In his early 30s, with Walter's same piercing blue eyes, Simon had been investigating corporate corruption in elder care for a local news site. "My editor thinks these stories are depressing and don't get clicks," Simon confided during a visit with Walter. "But I don't care. What's happening in these facilities is criminal." "What if you had documentation?" I asked carefully. "Records, timestamps, medication logs showing patterns of neglect." Simon's eyes widened. "That would change everything, from anecdotal complaints to provable violations." That evening, using the secure channels Tyler had established, I anonymously sent Simon our first batch of evidence, carefully redacted to protect staff who had helped us. Like Louisa, but comprehensive enough to show systemic issues at Golden Sunset. "We're not just fighting for ourselves," I told Walter as we finalized the documentation. "We're fighting for every resident who can't speak up, and for those who'll come after us." Walter nodded gravely. "Justice isn't just about punishment. It's about changing what's broken." I thought of Michael, then my son, also broken in his way. Money had warped his values, just as it had his father's, turning provision into possession, success into status. As much as his actions had hurt me, I understood the fear that drove him, fear of losing control, of appearing less than successful, of failing to measure up. That night, I dreamed of James, not the bitter man he'd become, but the young teacher I'd first fallen in love with, passionate about educating children from disadvantaged backgrounds. In the dream, he looked at me with profound sadness. "We did this, Margaret," he said. "We thought hiding the money would protect him, but it just taught him to value it above everything else." I woke with tears on my cheeks and a heavy realization. My quest for justice couldn't be solely about revenge. It needed to be about restoration, not just for the nursing home residents, but perhaps, if possible, for my son as well. After my hospitalization, I knew time was of the essence. Eleanor arrived the following morning with documents from the safe deposit box and a determined gleam in her eye. "I've drawn up the paperwork for your new anonymous LLC," she informed me. "What do you want to call it?" I thought for a moment. "Phoenix Holdings." Eleanor smiled. "Rising from the ashes. I like it." She passed me a folder. "I've also established the James Williams Memorial Foundation as requested, with Dorothy, Walter, and Louisa as initial board members." "Do they know the foundation's true worth?" I asked. "No," Eleanor confirmed. "They believe it's a modest memorial fund you've established from your husband's life insurance. Only you and I know it's initially funded with $2 million from your technology holdings." The first order of business for Phoenix Holdings was purchasing 3 residential properties surrounding Michael's neighborhoods. Small, but strategic. Acquisitions that would give me control over future development without arousing suspicion. Meanwhile, the James Williams Memorial Foundation began its first official project, a scholarship program for promising students with financial need. The foundation's paperwork listed its mission as supporting education and elder welfare initiatives. In memory of James Williams, educator and advocate, we've received 50 applications already, Eleanor reported during her next visit, including one from a student at Westlake Preparatory Academy. I raised an eyebrow, Emma. The application came through her school counselor, Eleanor confirmed with a small smile, completely above board. Excellent grades, compelling essay about elderly advocacy, strong recommendation letters. The selection committee doesn't know. She's your granddaughter, and they'll select her. Based on merit alone, she's among the top candidates. With a little nudge regarding her elder advocacy experience, she'll be a shoo-in. I nodded, satisfied. The scholarship would give Emma independence from Michael's financial control, allowing her to attend her dream college without strings attached. It wasn't favoritism, she'd earned it with her genuine compassion and hard work. A week later, Simon published his first article about Golden Sunset, a carefully worded piece, highlighting concerning patterns at several elder care facilities, including our nursing home. Though it named no specific staff members, the article sent ripples through the administration. Mrs. Bellworth called a mandatory resident meeting, her thin lips pressed into an even thinner line as she addressed us. It has come to our attention that someone has been spreading falsehoods about our facility to the media, she announced, scanning our faces. Such actions not only damage Golden Sunset's reputation, but could jeopardize the quality care we provide. To all of you, Walter snorted loudly from his wheelchair. Quality care. Is that what you call leaving Frank Peterson on the floor for 7 minutes while he couldn't breathe? Mrs. Bellworth's face reddened. Mr. Simmons, individual medical incidents, taken out of context, can be misleading to those without healthcare training. I interviewed 3 presidents and covered 2 wars, Walter replied dryly. I think I can recognize neglect when I see it. After the meeting, Dorothy found me in the garden. They're watching us, she whispered, pretending to admire a rosebush. Bellworth had Jenkins go through our rooms this morning during physical therapy. Jenkins, the maintenance man who always seemed to be fixing things that weren't broken, had been suspiciously present outside my room several times recently. I'd taken to keeping my documentation with Eleanor and storing digital copies in the cloud, thanks to Tyler's setup. Did they find anything? I asked. Dorothy's elegant white eyebrows rose. Not in my room. I've been hiding contraband since boarding school. Amateurs. Through my network of similarly abandoned elders, we established a communication system throughout Golden Sunset, notes passed during card games, whispered messages during group activities. Signals during meals all allowed us to document and share instances of neglect without staff knowledge. Mrs. Peterson in room 212 hadn't received her heart medication. For 2 days, Mr. Abernathy's bedsores weren't being treated properly. Ms. Collins waited 3 hours for assistance to the bathroom. Each incident was carefully recorded, dated, and added to our growing body of evidence. Through my private investigator, discreet professional Eleanor had recommended discovered something illuminating. Golden Sunset was owned by Meridian Healthcare, a large conglomerate that Michael's investment firm had been aggressively courting as a client. He's been pitching their pension fund management for months, my investigator reported. That explains why he chose this specific facility. Despite its mixed reviews, he's trying to impress the parent company. The irony was almost painful. Michael had placed me in a substandard facility to curry favor with potential clients, unaware that his actions were providing me with ammunition against both him and them. Expanding my strategy, I used Phoenix Holdings to anonymously purchase a significant stake in Michael's largest remaining client's business, Bradford Technologies. The 8% ownership gave me voting power in their board decisions regarding investment management. Meanwhile, Dorothy's health began failing, after a fall that the staff claimed was unpredictable, but that 3 residents witnessed as resulting from a freshly mopped floor with no warning signs. She developed pneumonia that went untreated for crucial early days. I sat beside her bed as she drifted in and out of consciousness, her once perfect posture now crumpled against hospital pillows. Did I ever tell you I was a dancer? She whispered during a lucid moment, her voice thin and reedy. Principal with American Ballet Theater, performed for Kennedy at the White House. I didn't know, I admitted, holding her fragile hand. All those years of discipline, sacrifice, then one car accident shattered my knee, her eyes cloudy with cataracts, but still alert, fixed on mine. My brother managed my career, my money. When I couldn't dance anymore, he took everything, claimed performance fees as management expenses, sold my apartment, emptied accounts. That's terrible, I said, squeezing her hand gently. I wasted decades being bitter, plotting ways to ruin him. A weak smile lifted her lips. By the time I could have, he'd ruined himself with gambling. Died alone, just like I will. You're not alone, I insisted. Her gaze sharpened. Promise me something, Margaret. Don't let bitterness consume you like it did me. Whatever you're planning, I know you're planning something, make sure it builds more than it destroys. Dorothy died 3 days later. At her small memorial service in the Golden Sunset Day Room, I learned she'd been born Dorothy Elizabeth Winters. Acclaimed as America's swan during the 1960s, none of her family attended. The only acknowledgement from her estranged daughters was a hastily ordered flower arrangement with a card signed by an assistant. That night, I modified my plans. Dorothy's warning echoed in my mind. Make sure it builds more than it destroys. Using a portion of my fortune, I arranged for additional caregivers to be hired at Golden Sunset as regular staff, but reporting directly to Eleanor. They focused on the most vulnerable residents, those without families or advocates, improving their care while gathering more evidence of systematic neglect. One of these caregivers, Sarah, became my eyes and ears throughout the facility. Young, but experienced with a degree in gerontology and a passion for elder rights, she provided detailed reports on conditions in areas residents couldn't access. The medication storage protocols are completely inadequate, she reported during one of our discreet meetings in the garden. Temperature controls for sensitive medications frequently malfunction, and the tracking system is paper-based, with numerous discrepancies. While my nursing home advocacy progressed, Michael's financial situation deteriorated. Eleanor brought troubling news during her next visit. He's been making inquiries about accessing more of your assets, she reported, claiming he needs to reinvest your retirement funds due to market volatility. He's trying to use the power of attorney to access accounts we've kept hidden from him. Can he succeed? I asked. No, Eleanor assured me. The POA has those limitations we discussed, but his attempts suggest he's becoming desperate. That desperation was confirmed when Emma called from college, where she'd started early summer courses thanks to the foundation scholarship. Dad's been calling me almost daily, she said, her voice tense. Asking weird questions about whether you ever mentioned investments or property to me. He even asked if you gave me anything valuable to hold on to before they moved you to Golden Sunset. What did you tell him? I asked. That you gave me your love and support, which is more than he's done lately, she replied with a hint of defiance. He hung up on me. Around this time, I had a vivid nightmare about James. In the dream, he stood in our old living room surrounded by the possessions Michael had sold off. What are you doing, Margaret? He asked, his expression troubled. You've become as calculating as I was. Is this really what you want? I woke, shaken, questioning my motives. Was I seeking justice, or had I crossed into revenge? The line between them seemed increasingly blurred. That morning I called Emma. How are your father and Jason? I asked, surprising her with the question. Dad's a mess, she admitted. His business is failing. He and Mom are fighting constantly, and he's drinking too much. Jason's avoiding home, staying with friends. Will you do something for me? I requested. Something that might be difficult. Anything. Grandma, try to maintain a relationship with your father, I said. Despite everything, he's lost. Emma, not evil. Lost people can find their way back with the right guidance. After what he did to you, Emma sounded incredulous. Because of what he did to me, I clarified. I don't want his actions to destroy your family completely. That would be another tragedy. Emma was silent for a long moment. I'll try, she finally said. But I won't pretend what he did was okay. I'm not asking you to. Just keep the door open, even if just a crack. As June turned to July, my schemes began bearing fruit. Phoenix Holdings now owned 5 properties surrounding Michael's neighborhood, quietly influencing zoning decisions that would impact his property values. The James Williams Memorial Foundation had awarded 15 scholarships, including one to Emma and another to Louisa's daughter for her medical studies. Most significantly, Bradford Technologies, where I now held that crucial 8% ownership, called a board meeting to review their investment management. As a significant shareholder, Phoenix Holdings submitted concerns about Michael's firm's performance and suggested alternatives. Eleanor attended as my proxy. It went exactly as we anticipated, she reported afterward. They're terminating their contract with Michael's firm next month. Bradford Technologies was Michael's last major client. Losing them would devastate his already struggling business. Walter's health was also declining, though unlike Dorothy, he faced his deterioration with journalistic detachment, documenting his own symptoms with clinical precision. before being transferred to intensive care for heart complications. He entrusted me with his life's research, dozens of notebooks detailing corporate corruption in healthcare, including damning connections between Golden Sunset's parent company and several political figures who had blocked regulatory reform. Use it wisely, he instructed, his voice weak but determined. Simon knows what to do with it. The complete picture is more important than any single facility. Walter's research, combined with our Golden Sunset documentation, provided Simon with enough material for a comprehensive that would extend far beyond our nursing home. The article was scheduled for publication in August, timed to coincide with congressional hearings on elder care standards. My plans were progressing perfectly, perhaps too perfectly. I'd been so focused on orchestrating everything that I neglected my own health. The stress, inadequate care, an emotional toll culminated in a minor stroke that left me temporarily unable to communicate. I lay in the hospital bed, frustrated by my inability to speak clearly, watching nurses and doctors discuss my condition. The stroke was mild. With therapy, I would likely recover fully, but the experience was humbling, reminding me of my mortality and vulnerability. During my recovery, Michael and Vanessa visited briefly. They stood at the foot of my bed, discussing my condition as if I weren't present. How long will rehabilitation take? Michael asked the doctor, checking his watch repeatedly. Several weeks, potentially, the doctor replied, though Mrs. Williams is otherwise healthy, which works in her favor. As they headed toward the door, Vanessa whispered to Michael, not quite softly enough, if her condition is declining this rapidly, maybe it will simplify things. Financially? I mean, Michael's response was lost as they exited, but the implication was clear. They were speculating about my death and any financial benefits it might bring them. What they didn't notice was Emma, arriving early for her visit, standing just outside the door. From my bed, I could see her face transform as she overheard their conversation, shock, then grief, then a hardening resolve that made her look suddenly older than her 17 years. She entered after they left, sitting beside my bed and taking my hand. I heard them, she said simply, tears in her eyes. I knew they were selfish, but this, ... She shook her head. I'm done trying, Grandma. They're not worth saving. I squeezed her hand, wishing I could speak clearly to tell her that everyone was worth saving, even those who seemed furthest gone. But perhaps this was a lesson Emma needed to discover for herself, in her own time. As I lay in that hospital bed, watching the summer light filter through blinds, I realized my scheme needed modification. Dorothy's warning resonated more strongly than ever. Make sure it builds more than it destroys. Yes, Michael needed to face consequences for his actions, but destruction for destruction's sake would ultimately leave everyone diminished. Me. True justice required something more creative, more redemptive than mere retribution. When I returned to Golden Sunset, I would shift my strategy. The evidence against the nursing home would still be used, but my approach to Michael would change. I would offer him something he desperately needed, but probably didn't deserve. A chance at redemption, whether he would take it, remained to be seen. My return to Golden Sunset after the stroke was met with a mixture of genuine concern from fellow residents and thinly veiled annoyance from the administration. My hospitalization had created paperwork complications. According to Mrs. Bellworth, who seemed more distressed about the forms than my health, "You'll need to be reassessed," she informed me briskly. "State regulations require it after any acute medical event." I nodded agreeably. My speech mostly recovered, though still slightly slurred when I was tired. The stroke had been a warning, a reminder that time wasn't unlimited, even for carefully constructed plans. 3 days after my return, Simon's full investigative piece on elder care abuse hit the front page of the local newspaper and spread quickly across digital platforms. Using anonymous accounts from Golden Sunset residents and documented evidence of care failures, the article painted a damning picture not just of our facility but of the entire Meridian healthcare system. Profit over patients. The elder care crisis ran the headline, accompanied by a blurred image of medication logs showing discrepancies in dosing records. Though no residents were named, the details were specific enough to trigger immediate reactions. By afternoon, state inspectors arrived unannounced at Golden Sunset, their official vehicles parked prominently at the entrance. Staff scurried through hallways, frantically updating charts and cleaning neglected areas. Mrs. Bellworth's usual composure cracked as she directed a hasty refreshing of common spaces that hadn't been properly maintained in months. "They can't just show up like this," I overheard her hissing to the head nurse. "Call Thomas at the regulatory office, remind him of our arrangement." But Thomas, whoever he was, apparently couldn't help this time. The inspection team split up, interviewing staff and residents separately. examining medication storage, and reviewing incident reports with determined efficiency. When an inspector named Ms. Harlow asked to speak with me privately, I welcomed her into my room, grateful that Gladys was at physical therapy. "Mrs. Williams," she began after introducing herself, "we understand you experienced a medication error that resulted in hospitalization. 3 consecutive days without my blood pressure medication," I confirmed. Despite multiple requests, Ms. Harlow nodded, making notes. "And was this documented in your chart?" "The chart shows the medication as administered," I replied, "but my blood pressure readings and subsequent strokes suggest otherwise." Her eyebrows rose slightly. "You've reviewed your medical chart?" I smiled. "Let's just say I have observant friends on staff." The inspection continued for 2 days, creating an atmosphere of nervous tension throughout the facility. Meals suddenly improved. Call buttons were answered promptly, and fresh flowers appeared in the day room. Temporary theater, Dorothy would have called it. I missed her sharp observations. On the 3rd day after the inspectors left, Michael arrived, unannounced and agitated. His normally immaculate appearance had slipped, his shirt wrinkled, his hair uncombed, his eyes bloodshot. "There you are," he said, as though I might have been elsewhere. "Why didn't you call me about this investigation?" "Hello, Michael," I replied calmly. "I'm recovering well from my stroke. Thank you for asking." He had the grace to look momentarily abashed before plowing ahead. "Mom, this is serious. Did you talk to those inspectors? What did you tell them?" I studied my son's face, the face I'd once counted tiny perfect fingers and toes beneath in a hospital long ago. The strain of recent months had aged him, deepening the lines around his eyes and mouth. "I told them the truth about my experience here," I answered, as did many residents. Michael ran a hand through his disheveled hair. "Do you have any idea what this could do? This facility is part of Meridian Healthcare. I'm trying to secure them as clients, and now there's this PR nightmare with state investigations and media coverage." "Interesting," I observed, "that your first concern is your business connection rather than whether your mother is receiving adequate care." He reached into his briefcase and produced an expensive box of chocolates. "I brought these for you," he said, changing tactics. "Your favorites?" The chocolates were filled with caramel, a type I'd been allergic to since childhood. Something James had always remembered, but Michael apparently never noticed. "Thank you," I said, setting them aside. "Michael, why did you choose Golden Sunset?" For me, the question seemed to catch him off guard. "It has an excellent reputation, and the location is convenient." "Convenient for whom?" I asked mildly. "It's 40 minutes from your home, but 5 minutes from Meridian's corporate headquarters. Did you even tour the facility before placing me here?" A flush crept up his neck. I saw the brochures. The amenities looked appropriate. Brochures rarely show the reality, I noted. Like investment prospectuses. Michael checked his watch. Another tell I recognized from James when conversations became uncomfortable. "I need to go. The inspectors want to review facility finances tomorrow, and I need to make some calls." After he left, I sat by the window, considering our interaction. Michael hadn't asked about my stroke recovery or shown genuine concern. He'd brought inappropriate chocolates and focused entirely on damage control for his business prospects. The son who'd once brought me dandelion bouquets and homemade cards had vanished completely. The fallout from Simon's article continued to ripple. Through Golden Sunset, Mrs. Bellworth, fearing liability, began implementing what she called staff restructuring, essentially firing lower-level employees. To create the appearance of accountability while protecting management, Louisa was among those terminated. Despite her exceptional care record, she came to say goodbye during her final shift, her eyes red-rimmed but her head held high. "They say I failed to document medication properly," she explained. "But we all know it is because I talked to residents' family when you were sick." "Emma," I nodded, understanding immediately. "I called ambulance that night," Louisa confirmed. "Mrs. Bellworth says this was protocol violation, but you needed hospital. Blood pressure was very dangerous." I reached for her hand. "Louisa, I want you to contact this person," I said, giving her Eleanor's card. "She's helping with a project that needs compassionate healthcare workers. Tell her Margaret sent you." Within a week, Eleanor had secured Louisa a position at Memorial Hospital with better hours and significantly higher pay. Through the James Williams Foundation, we also established a dedicated college fund for her daughter's medical needs, ensuring that financial stress wouldn't derail her education. "You have changed my life," Louisa told me during a visit to Golden Sunset on her day off. "Why would you do this for me?" "Because kindness matters," I replied, thinking of how rare, genuine compassion had become in my family, and because you deserve recognition for doing what's right. Meanwhile, Emma thrived in her summer college program. her voice increasingly animated during our phone calls. The foundation scholarship had given her unprecedented freedom to study without worrying about her parents' approval or financial control. "I'm thinking about majoring in social policy," she told me excitedly. "There's this amazing professor who specializes in elder law and healthcare advocacy. Her lectures are incredible, Grandma." "That sounds perfect for you," I encouraged, secretly pleased that my granddaughter had found a path that aligned with her natural compassion. But during our next call, Emma's tone had changed, an edge of anger replacing her enthusiasm. "Dad called," she said flatly. "He never asks about my classes or how I'm doing. He spent the whole time complaining about money and asking if you'd ever mentioned having investments or property he doesn't know about." "What did you tell him?" I asked. "I told him he should be ashamed," Emma replied, her voice hardening. "That he threw you away like you were nothing, and now he's hunting for money like some kind of vulture." I told him I didn't want his money or his toxic values. While I admired her loyalty, the growing rift troubled me. "Emma, anger can become its own kind of prison. Don't ask me to forgive him," she said sharply. "Not after what he did to you. Not after how he and Mom have been acting." Through my private investigator, I'd learned that Vanessa had indeed been spending considerable time with Michael's business partner, Craig Thompson. Their lunch meetings had evolved into afternoon hotel rendezvous, carefully disguised as charity committee work. More troublingly, they'd been recorded discussing what they believed was my hidden retirement money. That must be stashed somewhere. "She's old school," Vanessa had told Craig over drinks at an upscale bar. "People from her generation don't trust banks completely. There's got to be cash, jewelry, something valuable hidden away." Their willingness to pick over what they assumed were my meager assets while I was still alive was breathtaking in its callousness. Yet I found myself pitying them in their desperation. Their lives built on such hollow foundations that they'd resort to this. The most unexpected development came when Jason visited, lurking awkwardly in my doorway one Tuesday afternoon. Unlike Emma's warm presence, Jason had always been a handsome boy who'd adopted his parents' materialistic values and dismissive attitude toward the elderly. "Grandma," he nodded, remaining near the exit as if planning a quick escape. "Dad sent me to see how you're doing, did he?" I replied mildly. "Or did he send you to see if I've said anything to the state investigators?" Jason's cheeks colored slightly, confirming my suspicion. At 19, he lacked the polished deception skills of his parents. "He's just concerned," Jason mumbled unconvincingly. "Sit down, Jason." I patted the chair beside my bed. "Tell me how you're really doing." Perhaps it was the unusual direct question, or perhaps it was simple loneliness, but something cracked in Jason's carefully constructed facade. He sank into the chair, suddenly looking very young. "Everything's falling apart," he admitted. "Dad's firm is tanking. He and Mom barely speak, except to fight. The country club is threatening to revoke our membership over unpaid dues." "And how are you handling all that?" I asked. He stared at his hands. "I dropped out of business school." This surprised me. Michael had been grooming Jason to follow his career path since childhood. "Does your father know?" Jason shook his head. "I'm supposed to be networking this semester at a special business institute." "Really? I've been taking music theory classes at the community college." "Music?" I echoed, remembering the toy piano he'd loved as a child before Michael had replaced it with educational computer games. "Classical composition," he confirmed, a flash of genuine passion crossing his face. "I've been writing pieces since high school, secretly. Dad would lose it if he knew I was wasting time on something that won't maximize earning potential." "Your grandfather loved jazz," I told him, sharing a truth Michael had likely never mentioned. "He played saxophone in college. Had quite a talent for it before he decided banking was more respectable." Jason looked up, surprised. "Really? Dad always said Grandpa was focused on success from the beginning." "Your grandfather was many things," I said carefully, "but he wasn't always the man your father describes." Our conversation continued, revealing a young man far more thoughtful and conflicted than I'd realized. Beneath the entitled exterior Jason had cultivated to please his parents lay genuine talent and sensitivity that had been systematically suppressed. When he left, promising to return, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. My hidden fortune wasn't just a tool for justice against Michael, it could be a means of liberation for his children, allowing them to become their true selves rather than reflections of their parents' materialism. Using Phoenix Holdings, I continued implementing my financial strategy. I purchased the mortgage of Michael and Vanessa's mansion from their bank, becoming their anonymous landlord. When they missed their second consecutive payment, no foreclosure notice was issued, not yet. I wanted to observe how they would handle the mounting pressure. Simultaneously, through another shell company, I began buying businesses in their wealthy neighborhood and gradually raising commercial rents. The exclusive boutiques Vanessa frequented, the high-end restaurants where Michael entertained clients, the luxury services they considered essential all would slowly become less accessible as economic reality intruded on their insulated world, but my triumph was short. That evening I experienced a genuine health scare. Not another stroke, but a cardiac arrhythmia that left me lightheaded and struggling to breathe. Dr. Phillips, a compassionate physician who had begun making regular visits to Golden Sunset. After the state investigation, adjusted my medication and ordered additional monitoring. "You've been under considerable stress," he observed. "And while your mind is sharp as a tack, your body has been through a lot. You need to prioritize your well-being." His gentle admonishment struck home. I'd become so focused on my elaborate scheme that I'd neglected the most basic truth. Time was precious, and I was spending mine on retribution rather than healing. That night, I dreamed of Howard Brilliant, kind Howard, who had seen potential in a secretary when no one else had, who had built a company on innovation rather than exploitation. In the dream, he looked at me with disappointment. "This isn't why I helped you build your fortune, Margaret," he said sadly. "You were going to change the world, remember?" I woke with tears on my face and a clarity I'd been missing. My narrow focus on Michael's comeuppance had blinded me to the broader possibilities of my resources and influence. Dorothy and Walter hadn't fought against Golden Sunset's neglect just for personal vindication, but for systemic change. I needed to honor their legacy with more than personal revenge. As dawn broke outside my window, I made a decision that would alter the course of my plans entirely. The morning after my health scare, I called Eleanor with a modified strategy. My voice was steady, my purpose clear. "I want to establish an anonymous patient advocacy office near Golden Sunset," I instructed, staffed by qualified elder law attorneys to help residents navigate their rights and report abuse. Eleanor, ever adaptable, didn't question my shift in focus. "I know just the location, a small office suite, about 3 blocks from the facility. We could have it operational within weeks." "Make it happen," I said, "and draw up paperwork for the foundation to purchase the vacant lot on Maple Street, the one near the nursing home, the old community center site," Eleanor clarified. "What do you have in mind?" "Affordable housing for healthcare workers," I replied. "We'll name it after Dorothy." While Eleanor set these plans in motion, Emma arrived unannounced at Golden Sunset. Her face flushed with anger and determination. "I confronted them," she announced, pacing my small room. "Both of them, about how they've treated you, about their values, about everything." My heart sank. "What happened?" "Dad called me an ungrateful idealist and threatened to cut off my college funding," she reported with grim satisfaction. "I told him I have a scholarship so he can keep his blood money. And your mother," Emma's expression hardened. "She said I'd regret burning bridges when I'm older and wiser. Then she left for her tennis lesson or whatever she's really doing with Craig." I sighed, motioning for Emma to sit beside me. "I understand your anger, but confrontation rarely changes minds. It usually just hardens positions. So I should have stayed quiet. Let them think what they did was okay," she challenged. "No," I replied gently. "But there's a difference between speaking truth and seeking a fight. One opens possibilities, the other closes them." Emma studied me with confusion. "I don't understand how you can be so calm about all this. They abandoned you, Grandma. They took everything from you." I smiled slightly. "Not everything, Emma, never everything." Though I couldn't yet reveal the full truth. I wanted to ease her burden of righteous anger. It was consuming her just as Dorothy had warned. It might consume me. "Focus on building your future," I advised. "Let your parents face the consequences of their choices, without you carrying the weight of their redemption or punishment. That's not your responsibility." Meanwhile, the state investigation resulted in significant fines for Golden Sunset, but disappointingly few operational changes. Using Walter's research, Simon published a follow-up expose revealing political connections that had protected the facility from more serious consequences. The regulatory board chairman previously served as Meridian Healthcare's legal counsel. The article detailed 3 current board members have received substantial campaign donations from healthcare corporations with direct ties to for-profit elder care facilities. The public outcry was immediate and intense. Protests formed outside Meridian's headquarters, and several politicians issued statements calling for ethics investigations and regulatory reform. Through all this, Michael's investment firm continued its downward spiral. Bradford Technologies officially terminated their contract, the final blow to his financial stability. When he began missing mortgage payments on his mansion, I instructed the management company handling the loan to send polite but firm reminders rather than threatening notices. I wasn't interested in humiliating him publicly, only in removing the protective bubble of privilege that had distorted his values. Louisa, now thriving in her new position at Memorial Hospital, introduced me to her brother Carlos, a retired contractor. With decades of experience in residential construction, "My sister says you're planning something special," Carlos said during our first meeting in Golden Sunset's garden. His weathered face and calloused hands spoke of a lifetime of honest work. A place for healthcare workers to live affordably. That's it. Part of it, I confirmed, but I have a larger vision. Over the following weeks, Carlos helped me design plans for a revolutionary elder care community, one based on dignity and autonomy rather than profit. Residents would have private apartments with appropriate safety features, community spaces for social interaction, gardens for physical activity, and on-site medical support that respected independence. The current model infantilizes the elderly, I explained as we reviewed preliminary sketches. Scheduled meals, limited privacy, everything based on staff convenience rather than resident dignity. We can do better. Carlos nodded enthusiastically. My father's final years were in a place like this. It broke my heart to see such a proud man reduced to asking permission to go outside. Through the foundation, we quietly began purchasing additional land adjacent to the Maple Street property, assembling a campus large enough for our ambitious project. Jason visited again, this time without pretense of being sent by his father. He brought his laptop and, after some encouragement, shared recordings of music he'd composed, haunting piano pieces that revealed depth and sensitivity I hadn't realized he possessed. "Dad doesn't know I'm here," he admitted. "We had a fight. I finally told him I'm not going back to business school." "How did he take it?" I asked. Jason's laugh was bitter. He said I'm disowned. Cut me off completely. No money for tuition, housing, nothing. Said I can come back when I'm ready to be a Williams man, whatever that means. "Where are you staying?" I asked, concerned. "Friend's couch." He shrugged, trying to appear nonchalant, though his eyes betrayed his fear. "It's temporary. Your grandfather played saxophone in college." I told him again, an idea forming. He loved jazz. Coltrane, Davis, Parker. He gave it up because his father convinced him it wasn't a respectable career. "Dad never told me that," Jason said quietly. "There's a lot about your grandfather your father never understood," I replied. "James regretted giving up music for the rest of his life. It changed him, and not for the better." Before Jason left, I gave him Eleanor's card. "Call her," I suggested. "Tell her I sent you and that you need housing assistance from the Williams Foundation. She'll help you find a proper place to stay while you sort things out." The following week brought shocking news through my network of informants. Vanessa had left Michael after a public argument at a charity gala. She'd moved into a downtown apartment and retained a high-profile divorce attorney known for securing generous settlements. "She's in for a surprise," Eleanor commented dryly when she brought me this information. "Michael's assets have dwindled significantly. The house has multiple liens. The investment firm is essentially worthless, and his personal accounts are nearly depleted." "And Craig?" I asked, thinking of Vanessa's affair. "Transferred to the Chicago office last month," Eleanor reported. "Apparently he's no longer returning her calls." I felt a complex mixture of emotions at this news. My scheme had succeeded beyond expectations. Michael's carefully constructed facade of success had crumbled completely. Yet, instead of satisfaction, I felt a hollow sadness. The destruction of my son's marriage, however troubled it had been, wasn't cause for celebration. What truly troubled me, however, was how Michael would respond to this final humiliation. James had turned to alcohol when faced with financial disappointment, becoming increasingly bitter and controlling. Would Michael follow the same path? My concern was validated when Emma called, her voice tight with worry. "Dad showed up at my dorm last night," she reported. "He'd been drinking a lot. Campus security had to ask him to leave." "What did he want?" I asked, alarmed. "Money, mainly," Emma said. "He kept saying he just needed to get through this rough patch, and then everything would be fine. When I told him I didn't have any money to give him, he started rambling about how you must have hidden assets somewhere." "Are you safe?" I pressed. "Did he threaten you?" "No," Emma assured me. "He was pathetic. Not dangerous, but, Grandma, I've never seen him like that, so desperate." After our call, I sat by the window watching rain streak down the glass, contemplating what Michael's rock bottom might look like and whether he could find his way back from it. The man who'd abandoned me at Golden Sunset was reaping the consequences of his actions. Yes, but he was still the boy I'd once rocked to sleep. The child who'd looked at me with complete trust and love. Dorothy's warning echoed again. Make sure it builds more than it destroys. My plans for the elder care community were progressing rapidly. The purchase of land was complete, preliminary designs approved, and initial permits filed. This project would create something lasting and meaningful, a model for dignified elder care that could be replicated nationwide. But what of my personal justice? The satisfaction of seeing Michael recognize what he'd done and truly understand the pain he'd caused? That evening, Emma arrived with unexpected news that would force my hand. "I've been researching," she said without preamble, setting her laptop on my bed. "About you, about Howard Pearson, about Horizon Technologies." Her expression was a mixture of awe and accusation. "You were there from the beginning. You helped build one of the most successful tech companies of the early Silicon Valley era." I kept my face neutral. "I was Howard's assistant." "Yes." Emma shook her head. "More than that. You were listed as executive vice president in their IPO filing and the stock distribution." She turned her laptop to show me scanned documents she'd somehow obtained. "You held 20% of the company when it went public in 1985. My clever granddaughter had unraveled my secret through sheer persistence and research skills." I felt a surge of pride even as I realized the implications. "The company was valued at over $300 million then," Emma continued, "which means your share was worth about $60 million. I finished for her." Initially, Emma's eyes widened. "And Ed, with compound growth over 40 years. Grandma, you're not just wealthy, you're rich, really rich." I nodded slowly. "Yes, but why hide it? Why let Dad think you had nothing? Why let him put you in this horrible place?" The questions tumbled out, her confusion evident. "It's complicated, Emma," I replied. "Your grandfather and I made decisions about money that seemed right at the time. We wanted your father to develop character, not depend on wealth, but perhaps our approach was flawed." Emma processed this information, her expression shifting from confusion to something harder. "So this whole time while Dad was selling your house, dumping you here, treating you like a burden, you could have bought this entire facility." "Several of them, actually," I acknowledged. "It's been a test," Emma realized, her voice cooling. "You've been testing him. Testing all of us." "Not testing," I corrected. "Observing. Learning who people truly are when they believe I have nothing to offer them." Emma stood abruptly, pacing the small room. "So I'm just part of your experiment too? My scholarship, my freedom from Mom and Dad's control, was that all just manipulation?" Her accusation stung because it contained a kernel of truth. I had orchestrated events, pulled strings, arranged outcomes, convinced of my right to do so because of the wrongs done to me. "The scholarship was earned," I said quietly. "Your compassion, your advocacy for elders, your academic excellence are real." "Emma, the foundation simply recognized what was already there." "But you didn't trust me with the truth," she countered. "You let me believe you were vulnerable, helpless. Do you know how many nights I've cried myself to sleep thinking about you stuck in this place? How guilty I felt for not being able to help you." Her pain was palpable, and suddenly I saw my clever scheme through her eyes. Not as justified retribution, but as a web of deception that had caught innocent parties in its strands. "You're right," I admitted. "I should have trusted you. I was so focused on exposing your father's true character that I didn't consider how my methods would affect you." Emma's anger didn't dissipate entirely, but her posture softened slightly. "What are you planning to do to Dad?" "I know you're planning something." I hesitated, then made a decision. Emma deserved the complete truth, even if it reflected poorly on me. "I've been systematically dismantling his financial life," I explained. "Anonymously purchasing his mortgage, buying out his clients, acquiring properties around your neighborhood to affect property values. I wanted him to experience the vulnerability he forced upon me." Emma listened silently, her expression unreadable. "But recently," I continued, "I've been reconsidering. Destruction is easy, Emma. Building something worthwhile is harder and, ultimately, more satisfying. So you're just going to forgive him?" she asked incredulously, "after everything he did?" "Not forgive without accountability," I clarified, "but perhaps offer a path forward that doesn't simply destroy him. A chance to rebuild differently, better." Emma considered this, some of the tension leaving her shoulders. "I don't know if he deserves that chance." "Perhaps not," I agreed. "But offering it says more about who I am than who he is." As Emma prepared to leave, still processing everything she'd learned, I asked, "Will you keep my secret a little longer? There's something I need to do before everyone knows the truth." She hesitated, then nodded a little longer. "But Grandma, no more tests, no more secrets. That's my condition." "Agreed," I promised, relieved that our relationship, though strained, remained intact. After she left, I called Eleanor with new instructions. "It's time to arrange a meeting with Michael," I said. "Not here at Golden Sunset, somewhere neutral." "What are you planning?" she asked cautiously. "A choice," I replied. "I'm going to offer my son a choice. The cafe where I arranged to meet Michael had been a favorite spot for James and me during the early years of our marriage. Back then, it had been a simple diner called Lou's where we'd shared Saturday breakfasts, debating our dreams over endless cups of coffee. Now renamed Heritage, it maintained some of its original charm despite the artisanal menu and exposed brick walls. I arrived early, settled at a corner table, and arranged the items I'd brought. Old photo albums, business documents from Horizon Technologies, and the original stock certificates Howard had given me as Christmas bonuses. Michael arrived 20 minutes late, disheveled in a way that would have been unthinkable months ago. His designer shirt was wrinkled, his face unshaven, and dark circles shadowed his eyes. When he spotted me, confusion briefly crossed his face. Perhaps he'd expected the meeting to be about accessing more of my supposed retirement funds. "Mom," he said, sliding into the chair across from me. "You're looking ... better. How are you feeling?" "Well enough," I replied. "Thank you for coming." His eyes darted to the materials spread across the table. "What's all this?" "Our history." I answered simply, "Yours and mine." Michael fidgeted, glancing repeatedly at his watch, a nervous habit rather than impatience. The Rolex was gone, replaced by something less ostentatious. "Look, Mom, if this is about the nursing home situation, I want you to know I'm exploring other options. Once I sort out some temporary cash flow issues, this isn't about Golden Sunset," I interrupted gently, at least not directly. I opened the first photo album to images of Howard Pearson's original Office 5 programmers and me, the lone woman, standing proudly before a sign reading Horizon Technologies. Michael had seen these photos before, but never understood their significance. "You know I worked as a secretary at a tech company before you were born," I began. "What you don't know is what happened after." Over the next hour, I revealed everything: my career at Howard's company, my role in developing their groundbreaking software, the stock options that made me wealthy beyond imagination, and James's insistence that we hide our fortune from Michael. "Your father believed money would corrupt you if you knew about it too young," I explained. "He wanted you to develop character, work ethic, ambition." Michael stared at the stock certificates, his hands trembling slightly as he calculated the potential value. "So all this time, all these years, you've been wealthy, secretly wealthy." I nodded. "The house you grew up in, the modest lifestyle, your father's small accounting practice, it was all a choice, not a necessity." "But why?" His voice cracked with confusion and the first stirrings of anger. "Why make me struggle? Why let me believe we were just comfortable when we could have had everything?" "That was your father's decision initially," I said. "He came from nothing and believed struggle built character." I agreed at the time. "Later, when you were grown, I wanted to see what you'd do with the moderate trust fund we provided. You'd build something meaningful or chase status." Michael's face flushed. "So my whole life has been some kind of test, some character assessment." "Not a test," I corrected. "But yes, I wanted to see who you would become without the cushion of extreme wealth." "And clearly I failed your assessment," he said bitterly. "You made choices," I replied, "each small compromise leading to the next until you'd constructed a life built on appearances rather than substance." Michael ran a hand through his hair, his composure cracking further. "You have no idea what it's like, the pressure to succeed, to maintain a certain lifestyle. Dad always pushed me to achieve more, be more." "Your father had his own demons," I acknowledged. "His relationship with money was ... complicated. He projected those issues onto you, and for that, I'm sorry. I should have intervened more decisively." "And now what?" Michael demanded, gesturing at the documents. "You reveal you've been a secret millionaire all along. Is this supposed to make me feel better about my entire business collapsing? About Vanessa leaving? About my life falling apart?" "No," I said quietly. "This revelation isn't about making you feel better. It's about truth, something that's been in short supply in our family." I slid a folder across the table containing printouts of property deeds, investment accounts, and the complex web of LLCs I'd established. "Your financial troubles aren't entirely bad luck or market forces." As Michael flipped through the documents, his expression shifted from confusion to shock to dawning comprehension. "Phoenix Holdings, Williams Memorial Foundation. These are all you? You've been behind everything." "Yes." His hands clenched into fists. "You could have prevented all of this. Instead, you orchestrated my downfall while watching from that nursing home. Do you have any idea what you've done to me, to my family?" "I know exactly what I've done," I replied evenly. "Just as you knew what you were doing when you sold my house, discarded my possessions, and left me in a substandard facility to be forgotten." Michael flinched as if struck. "The question now," I continued, "isn't what I've done or what you've done. It's what happens next." "What happens next?" he echoed incredulously. You've destroyed everything I built. What exactly do you think happens? Next, I met his gaze steadily. That depends entirely on you, Michael. From my purse, I removed 2 envelopes and placed them side by side on the table. 2 options, I explained. The first envelope contains papers officially documenting your financial mismanagement of my affairs. Under the power of attorney, your inappropriate sale of my house, liquidation of my possessions, and selection of Golden Sunset despite its documented care deficiencies. If I choose to pursue this legally, your remaining professional reputation would be irreparably damaged. Michael stared at the envelopes, his breathing shallow. And the second option? The second envelope contains an offer. The Williams elder care community is breaking ground next month. It will revolutionize how we approach aging in America. Dignity care that honors independence while providing necessary support. The foundation needs someone with business experience to help establish its operational structures. You single quotes offering me a job? Michael asked incredulously. I'm offering you a chance to rebuild differently, I clarified. To use your skills for something meaningful rather than just accumulating status symbols. You would start as a consultant. Proving yourself like anyone else. Michael barked a harsh laugh. After everything, you expect me to come work for you? To be grateful for the opportunity? I expect nothing, I replied calmly. I'm presenting a choice. What you do with it reveals who you truly are, not who your father pressured you to be. Not who Vanessa expected you to be, but who Michael Williams chooses to be when stripped of pretense. Our eyes locked across the table, decades of unspoken truths between us. In his face, I caught glimpses of the little boy who'd once brought me dandelion bouquets, the teenager who'd struggled under James's rigid expectations, and the man who'd lost himself in the pursuit of external validation. I need time to think, he finally said, gathering his coat. Of course, I nodded. The offer stands for 1 week. As he turned to leave, I added, Michael, regardless of what you decide, I've instructed the foundation to establish a trust for Emma and Jason. Their futures won't be casualties of our family dynamics. Something flashed across his face, relief mingled with shame before. He nodded stiffly and departed. I remained at the cafe long after he'd gone, sipping tea and watching rain begin to speckle the windows. The confrontation had drained me, but a sense of peace settled in its wake. I had neither concealed the truth nor used it as a weapon. What Michael did with it would be his choice alone. 2 days later, Simon's follow-up article published, using Walter's research to expose extensive political connections between Meridian Healthcare and regulatory officials. The revelations triggered formal congressional inquiries and prompted the resignation of several state officials. Golden Sunset announced it would be closing due to financial restructuring, a euphemism for the fallout from the investigation. Residents received notice they had 30 days to find new accommodations, causing panic throughout the facility. Where will I go? Gladys asked me that evening, real fear in her voice for the first time since I'd known her. My daughter lives in Australia. There's nobody else. Similar conversations echoed throughout Golden Sunset as residents with limited options faced uncertain futures. Many risked being transferred to equally problematic facilities or split from the care networks and friendships they'd established. I immediately mobilized the Williams Foundation resources, securing appropriate placements for vulnerable residents without families. Working with Eleanor and a team of elder advocates, we ensured each transfer included comprehensive care assessments and follow-up monitoring to prevent further neglect. This advocacy work attracted media attention beyond Simon's reporting. A local television station featured our efforts, highlighting the broader issue of elder displacement when for-profit facilities close abruptly. This isn't just about one nursing home, I told the reporter who interviewed me. It's about a system that treats our seniors as profit centers rather than people deserving dignity. The day after the broadcast, Michael appeared at my door in Golden Sunset. His appearance had improved slightly. He'd shaved and his clothes were pressed, but tension lined his face. Can we talk? He asked, remaining in the doorway as if uncertain of his welcome. I nodded, gesturing to the chair beside my bed. I've been served with foreclosure notices, he began without preamble. The house, the vacation, property in Tahoe, everything. I assume that's your doing as well? Phoenix Holdings owns your mortgage, I confirmed. The notices were standard procedure. After missed payments, Michael exhaled slowly. You really did think of everything. I had decades to plan while I played the role of the financially naive widow you thought me to be, I reminded him. He winced at the accuracy of this assessment. Did you enjoy it? Watching everything collapse around me? The question deserved an honest answer. Initially, yes, I admitted. When you first abandoned me here, I wanted you to experience the same vulnerability, the same helplessness. But revenge is a poor companion, Michael. It takes more than it gives. He nodded slowly, seeming to truly hear me for the first time. "I've been talking to Emma," he said. "She's still angry, but she agreed to video chat yesterday. She told me about your elder care community project." "It's more than a project," I corrected. "It's a model we hope to replicate nationwide. A different approach to aging, one based on dignity and choice, rather than warehousing the elderly." "She also told me how you helped Jason," he continued. "Found him an apartment, encouraged his music." His voice caught slightly. "That should have been me." "It's not too late," I said quietly. Michael stared at his hands. "I don't know if I can do what you're offering. Start over completely, work for a foundation, admit publicly how wrong I've been. The hardest journeys often lead to the most meaningful destinations," I observed. "When did you get so philosophical?" he asked with a hint of his old sarcasm. "Somewhere between being abandoned in a nursing home and watching my son finally face reality," I replied dryly. A ghost of a smile touched his lips before fading. "I need more time to think about your offer. But in the meantime, I found something you should see." From his briefcase, he withdrew a flash drive. "Simon's investigation into Meridian Healthcare uncovered some disturbing connections. Your friend Walter was right, it goes deeper than one nursing home chain. Some of the same board members have interests in pharmaceutical companies that supply these facilities." "Explain," I prompted, sitting straighter. "There's evidence suggesting they've been testing experimental sedatives on nursing home residents, medications not fully approved but administered under different labels." His expression was grim. "The records Walter collected contain medication logs with unusual patterns. Simon needs someone with pharmaceutical knowledge to interpret them." This revelation shifted something between USA's shared purpose emerging from the wreckage of our relationship. Michael might still be deciding about his future, but he'd chosen to bring this information forward rather than ignore it. "I know someone who can help," I said, thinking of Dr. Phillips. "This could be much bigger than Golden Sunset or even Meridian." "I thought the same thing." Michael nodded. "If you'll accept my help, I have contacts in regulatory agencies who might listen now that the initial investigation has created openings." For the first time in years, perhaps decades, we were working together toward something larger than ourselves. The moment felt significant, not reconciliation. Exactly. But the possibility of it. After Michael left, I received unexpected news. Emma had been offered a prestigious internship with a national elder advocacy organization, based partly on her work documenting conditions at Golden Sunset. Her application had included anonymous resident testimonials she'd gathered during her volunteer visits. "They want me to help develop a youth outreach program," she told me excitedly by phone, "teaching high school and college students about elder advocacy and intergenerational connection." "That's wonderful," I said, deeply proud of the woman she was becoming. "Will you accept?" "Already did," she confirmed. "And Grandma?" I told them about your elder care community concept. "They're interested in documenting the development as a case study for their policy recommendations." Emma's enthusiasm reminded me of myself at her age, the conviction that meaningful change was possible, the determination to be part of creating it. Unlike me, however, she wouldn't have to hide her intelligence behind a secretary's desk or fight for recognition in mail spaces. The world had changed, albeit imperfectly. That evening, I received notification that a lawsuit had been filed against me by Michael's attorney, claiming I had concealed family assets and caused emotional distress through abandonment. The legal action was clearly desperate and without merit, a last flailing attempt to avoid responsibility rather than anger. I felt a profound sadness. Despite our conversation and apparent progress, Michael had chosen litigation over transformation, blame over accountability. Perhaps I had expected too much too soon. Decades of entitlement and self-deception couldn't be undone in a single revelation, no matter how dramatic. Eleanor called immediately after receiving the legal notice. "This is absurd," she fumed. "He has no standing, no evidence." "I'll file a motion to dismiss immediately." "No," I said, surprising her. "Let it proceed for now." "Margaret, why would you?" "Because sometimes people need to play their final card before they can truly change," I explained. "Michael needs to see this path is futile before he can consider a different one." Eleanor sighed. "You know him better than I do. But this feels like enabling more bad behavior." "Not enabling," I corrected. "Just recognizing that transformation rarely happens in a straight line." The lawsuit represented Michael's last desperate grasp at his old life, the life built on entitlement and appearances. It would fail, of course, but perhaps that final failure would clear the path for something more authentic to emerge from the ruins. 3 weeks after Michael filed his lawsuit, I invited him, Emma, and Jason to meet once more. At Heritage, this time, I arrived with no documents or evidence, only the photo albums chronicling our family history, and a small box containing mementos I'd managed to save from the house. Jason arrived first, hesitantly approaching my table. At 20, he still maintained the handsome features he'd inherited from his father, but the entitled arrogance had faded, replaced by a quieter confidence. "Grandma," he greeted me with a genuine hug. "The foundation helped me get into that music program I told you about. I'm starting next semester." "I'm glad," I said sincerely. "Your grandfather would be proud not of your success, necessarily, but of your courage to pursue what matters to you." Emma arrived next, bringing a warm energy that immediately lifted the atmosphere. She'd cut her hair into a stylish bob and wore a professional outfit that somehow maintained her youthful spirit. "The internship is incredible," she gushed. After greeting me, "They're actually listening to my ideas about engaging younger advocates, and I'm learning so much about policy work." When Michael finally entered, the cafe fell momentarily silent. He paused in the doorway, taking in the scene of his mother and children together before approaching slowly. His appearance had improved since our last meeting, cleaner, more rested, but the designer clothes and arrogant posture were gone, replaced by simple attire and a humbler bearing. "Thank you for coming," I said as he took the last empty seat, "especially given the circumstances." Michael glanced at his children, clearly uncertain about discussing the lawsuit in their presence. "They know," I confirmed. "About everything," he nodded, then surprised me by addressing them directly. "I dropped the lawsuit this morning," he told them, his voice steady despite evident difficulty. "It was ... wrong. All of it." Emma's eyebrows rose skeptically while Jason studied his father with cautious hope. "I've spent weeks thinking about everything," Michael continued, focusing on the table rather than meeting our eyes. "About who I've been, the choices I've made. About what your grandfather taught me or what I thought he was teaching me." He glanced at the photo albums I'd brought. "Dad always emphasized success, achievement, status. I thought that's what he valued most, what would make him proud. But I'm starting to understand I might have misinterpreted everything." I handed him a faded photograph from the Stack James at 22, playing saxophone in a college jazz quartet, his face alive with joy. "Your father was many things, Michael, some wonderful, some deeply flawed, like all of us." Michael stared at the image as if seeing a stranger. "He never told me about this, about the music, because he regretted giving it up," I explained. "He thought he needed to abandon his passion to be responsible. That choice made him bitter in ways that infected his entire approach to life and to parenting." "I've done the same thing to Jason," Michael acknowledged, glancing at his son. "Pushed him away from what he loves because I couldn't see its value." Jason shifted uncomfortably. "You said music was for people who couldn't handle the real world." "Was wrong," Michael said simply, "completely wrong." The direct admission hung in the air between them, perhaps the first time Michael had ever acknowledged such fundamental error to his son. I opened the small box I'd brought, removing items one by one. James's cufflinks, Michael's childhood baseball trophy, a clay handprint he'd made in kindergarten. These were in my bedside table when you packed for Golden Sunset. The only mementos I managed to keep. Michael stared at the items, recognition and shame crossing his face. "The movers packed everything so quickly. I should have been more careful, more thoughtful." "Yes," I agreed. "Neither accusatory nor forgiving. You should have." Emma leaned forward. "So what happens now? With all of us? I mean, it was the question at the heart of our gathering, where we went from here. Whether reconciliation was possible after so much damage." I looked at Michael. "That depends largely on your father's next steps." Michael took a deep breath. "I've been volunteering at a homeless shelter downtown. Just basic stuff, serving meals, helping with intake forms. It's the first useful thing I've done in years." He hesitated. "And I've been thinking about your offer, Mom, about the elder care community. And I prompted, I'd like to help," he said quietly. "Not running things I haven't earned that, but contributing where I can. Using whatever skills I have that might be valuable." The admission lacked his former bravado, but contained something more valuable: authenticity. "That would be a start," I acknowledged. "The project breaks ground next month. There's much to do before then." As our conversation continued, it became clear that Michael had begun a genuine, if tentative, journey toward change. He spoke of attending AA meetings, reconnecting with Jason's music aspirations, and reflecting on the values he'd prioritized throughout his career. "I lost myself somewhere along the way," he admitted. "Became someone I don't even recognize in the mirror." "That happens gradually," I noted. "One compromise at a time until you're living someone else's version of success." Before we parted, I shared my decision about the future of my fortune. I've legally established a trust that will convert my entire estate to approximately $12 million now into the operation and expansion of dignified elder care communities nationwide after my death. Michael nodded, showing no surprise or disappointment at not being named primary heir. It's the right use of the money. Emma and Jason will serve on the foundation board if they choose, I continued. Along with elder care experts and resident representatives, the communities will operate with strict ethical guidelines and require significant resident governance. And what about you, Grandma? Jason asked. Where will you live now that Golden Sunset is closing? I smiled. I've reserved the first apartment in the new community, not as its wealthy founder, but as a resident with the same rights and responsibilities as everyone else. Emma laughed, still keeping everyone on their toes. Someone has to, I replied with a wink. As we prepared to leave, Michael hesitated before asking, would it be all right if I visited you? Not for financial discussions or legal matters, just as your son. The question held vulnerability I hadn't seen from him in decades. I'd like that, I said simply. We parted with tentative hope rather than dramatic. Reconciliation, the beginning of healing rather than its completion. Some wounds would always leave scars. Some trust might never fully return. But the path forward now existed where before there had been only bitterness and deception. 5 years passed quickly. The Williams elder care community thrived, expanding to 3 locations across the state. My apartment overlooked gardens designed with Dorothy's love of flowers in mind, where residents gathered for conversations, games, and the occasional contraband wine, continuing her tradition. Michael, sober for 4 years now, had found unexpected purpose in developing the operational systems that kept our communities running efficiently while prioritizing resident dignity. He'd met Catherine, a compassionate hospice nurse, during his volunteer work, and their relationship had brought a gentleness to him I hadn't seen since childhood. Emma graduated law school with honors, joining a firm specializing in elder advocacy, while serving on our foundation board. Jason taught music at the communities, organizing resident choirs and instrumental groups that performed throughout the region. On a warm September afternoon, Michael visited my apartment, excitement evident in his expression. The 3rd community location is ready, he announced, showing me pictures on his tablet. Grand opening next month. Emma's running the legal department, and Jason's developing a music therapy program. As we sat on my balcony overlooking gardens now fully grown, I reflected on the journey that had brought us here. The pain of abandonment had transformed into purpose. The desire for revenge had evolved into creation. The secrecy and deception had given way to difficult but necessary truth. You know, Michael said thoughtfully, despite everything, I'm grateful for how things turned out. Not for what I did to you, I'll always regret that, but for the chance to rebuild, to find meaning beyond money and status. I reached over to pat his hand. That's the thing about genuine consequences, Michael. Unlike revenge, they offer the possibility of growth. Still, he chuckled. The look on my face when I learned about your fortune must have been priceless. Oh, it was, I assured him with a smile. It absolutely was. As the sun began to set, casting golden light across the garden where residents gathered for evening conversations, I felt a profound sense of peace. My legacy wasn't the money I'd accumulated through fortunate timing and Howard's generosity. It was the healing that happened when I chose restoration over revenge. Though watching Michael's face when he learned about my millions had indeed been rather satisfying. Some justice, it turns out, is sweeter when followed by grace.